CEO needs to own the change and work with the senior team to provide the vision and tell the story and help build alignment. And let me tell you a story. I think the poster child for this is a CEO whose name is Andy Eunice, and he's the CEO of Rocket Software, which is a Court Square portfolio company based up in Boston. Andy is the founder CEO. The company was built by the acquisition of dozens of small companies. And at the time that Court Square got involved, Andy, I think, had 22 direct reports. Nothing had been integrated. And with Daron's help and with the help of other folks, a new structure was developed that made a lot of sense. He developed a story, and he changed the strategy. Growth had been through acquisitions. Now growth was going to come principally through organic growth and from cross-selling, and also rebranding all of those organizations that had been individually branded to Rocket companies. In very short order, it was a very successsul change. And one of the reasons why was Andy owned the change. He developed the story. He called it the third chapter. And wherever he had an opportunity to talk at town halls or informally with people, he used the bully pulpit of the CEO to do that. He also had an annual meeting of the top 120 people that was not just rah-rah, but created work streams to look at some of the barriers of those changes and deal with them. The point, again, is that Andy led that change from the front. And I don't think that there is a successful change effort that is not led very visibly from the top. But the top team also has to be on board. Must lead by example, walk the talk, flexibly shift resources to focus the change process, and share accountability. And another example is, again, the company that is in that government space, government contracting space. They are divided up into 4 business units. And if you think about that change, that their whole operating structure is totally different now. It needs to change. And also the utilization of common resources is extremely important now because of not only efficiency but cost. It's really important that all 4 of those presidents, as well as the CEO, get on board. And it remains to be seen whether all of them will. And it's very likely that if that doesn't happen, that regardless of the person's past performance, that one of those presidents may not be a president for very long. Lever number 3, change management process. If you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up somewhere else. And so having a formal change process that defines who does what, who is responsible for what, is extremely important, and one that reinforces the new behaviors like the reward structure. An example that I'd like to share with you is a portfolio company. It's a Canadian company that was formed when the province, the Canadian province, privatized one of its information services functions. And the CEO, who is a chartered accountant, so he's very organized and structured, brought his team together, developed a plan, talked about the plan as the first thing at any of his staff meetings rather than at the end of the staff meeting when there wasn't time, and also put plan execution responsibility in the hands of each of the people reporting to him. And a major part of their bonus eligibility was on their successful completion of those parts of the project plan that they were responsible for. Change champions are also an important and helpful either formal or informal part of the change plan. And change champions are people down in the organization who get it and also have high credibility within the organization. And in our example with the individual up in Canada, he identified 6 people across the diagonal slice in the organization who really got it, who were high potentials at whatever level they were, and also were highly respected informally amongst their peers. He gave each of them responsibilities for the change, but also used them as sounding boards around, is this going to work or isn't going to work in your area, and also for feedback around how it's going. So think about kind of subverting some of those people down into the organization, particularly if it's a complex one. And the last lever is measure progress, both informal through change champions or formal through pulse checks. Pulse checks are real small sensing conversations, usually 3 or 4 questions that you do systematically at various milestones in the organization to sense how things are going and what needs to change. And also think in terms of first order behavior change and second order impact. A company that I worked with about a year ago was in the hospitality industry, and they wanted to significantly change their culture around the customer experience and identify some very specific behaviors for the people who at check-in and housekeeping and the restaurant and so forth they wanted them to do. And so they did what a lot of hospitality companies do these days. They put together a customer survey. And if you think about those customer surveys, they typically ask for 3 things. One is, what were the behaviors that you saw at check-in? Did they do this? Did they do that? And so on. Was there anybody in particular who you think we should reinforce in a positive way so you can reinforce the change? And then the impact. Would you come back and would you recommend this facility to someone else? So it's helpful to think in terms of all 3 of those elements when you're doing that. I'm going to take 2 minutes and talk about outliers and creating the critical mass, and then we'll stop. Dealing with outliers, rowers, riders, and anchors. I worked a few years ago with an executive who was a terrific turnaround executive. And one of the first things that he did was size up his leadership team and divide them up into rowers, riders, and anchors. And what he did next was he looked at the anchors and he threw them out of the boat. These were the people who were not only slowing down the boat, but could risk sinking it. Got rid of them very, very quickly. Either moved them into parts of the organization that they would do no harm, or they could be at least riders, and more often they were exited from the company. On the other side, he fed the rowers, reinforced them, gave them support, additional responsibility if that was important, fed them so that they had the energy to keep rowing. And then did a number of things that encouraged the riders who were sitting on the fence to pick up an oar and start rowing. Some of the things that we've talked about today. If they didn't pick up an oar, then those riders quickly became anchors, and there may be a second line of throwing the anchors overboard. So one of the things to think about is, when do development issues become a selection issue? And when I talk with executives about CEOs about a year in and ask them, what would you have done differently? Invariably, the first thing that's always said is, I didn't go fast enough. I didn't act fast enough on the people who I knew weren't going to get it. I knew in 2 months that this person wasn't going to get it. I waited another 6, and I did a lot of damage. And the ironic thing is that when you do take action, everybody is wondering, well, what took you so long? Because they know. So don't wait. And the other point that I want to make is create the critical mass. Don't activate these levers sequentially. If you just activate 1 or 2 levers, there's so many other things that continue to reinforce the old behavior that people aren't going to change. So do it all at once. Do it all at once. Create the burning platform. How much time do we have, Dave?
I think we're there.
We're there. Okay. You'll have the slides available to you. There's a couple of other slides that I have around the special case of private equity and looking at the relationship between the operating president and the private equity firm, and how owners gain a sight line without being too intrusive, and then acquisitions into an operating company. And we'll just stop there. Thanks.